Really help if the mic was plugged in, huh? Wow, there's already 4 people here. Awesome. Really help if the mic was plugged in, huh? Hey, there we go. Morning, the good old design doc. Yeah, one of them, not the main design doc. It's the Dino design doc. So, I think, yeah, I pinged Discord, pinged Twitter. That's good enough. Today we're going to do something very different. We're not going to prep any animation. We're going to start on the architecture for the dinosaurs. For the playable dino, actually not just playables, for all dinos. The reasoning behind this is that we've made good enough progress on animation that we're ready to start in earnest getting multiple types of dinos in the game. Because right now we only have the stego, and the stego is very much its own code island, more or less. How do I describe this to someone that doesn't code? We have to describe in the code kind of like a base set of code that all dinos will share. And the better we can theorize and plan it beforehand, before we actually start coding, the more efficient and effective we will be once we actually start, coding the various dinos. So we know the advantage here is that we already know a lot about all the dinos, and we've played the raptor before, and we've played a rolling stego. But before the coder Rand makes real long-term progress on any of the dinos, it doesn't make sense to just get in there and say, okay, here's the raptor. The raptor can do this. The raptor can do that. It makes a lot more sense to figure out what are all the things that dinos have in common, and where do they diverge in their abilities as well, and how can we represent that in code with the intent to make the one of the main goals is to make adding new dinos later a lot easier, and also just to be as efficient as we can once we actually start coding the ones that we know are going to be in the game. So I have taken it as my task to lay some groundwork for this architecture, and then Rand and I will work on it together later as well to flesh it out. And so we start with the dino, basically the dino run design doc. I'm not going to read this whole thing on stream, but we are going to. I'm not fully prepared. I got this far. I know what I need to do. I mean, I know what it kind of needs to look like by the time we're done. But I haven't quite figured out the. Why don't we just do it in Adobe, in Flash? Because I'm really just making a chart. Like a flow chart, kind of. Hold on, I am in a different window here. So we just need to visualize it. And here we go. So we'll have this as our inspiration and information. Put that over here. And we will be working things out over here. So what's important is that we do things with composition in mind instead of inheritance. And by that I mean inheritance is the way that I learned how to code, object oriented. Where, for example, in the original Dino code, there's a superclass, basically Dino, basically, and it doesn't matter if the Dino is computer controlled or player controlled. All Dinos inherit from the Dino superclass, and then there's two more classes: playable Dino and NPC Dino, and those both inherit from the master Dino class. So they inherit all of the characteristics of a Dino, but then they start to differ. And then Raptor inherited from playable Dino, because we thought you'd be able to play as other dinosaurs in the original, but we later found out that only the Raptor would be playable. And then we had a bunch of features that only the Raptor can do that were contained within like the main Raptor class. We're going to think of things differently here because the eventual goal is to have the game coded in ECS, Entity Component System, which is much more performant, and it saves a lot of energy, and it is it's just generally what we feel is the best forward move. And with that, we need to think more compositionally and less inheritantly. Compositionally meaning we think of things as components. So putting together lots of small things to make a whole. And data model wise, it's probably going to look pretty similar. But it's important that we think that way to begin with, just to make it easier once we start to lay down code. So this is going to be very general to start because this process actually takes a very long time, making an effective data model. What's up? I forgot how to say your username. IAIM? No. Double IAIM? That's probably not it. IAIM? Welcome, regardless. Oh, it's funny. Twitch is actually showing me the viewer count, like, for the first time ever. Just, I watched a stream yesterday that I know had like 60 or 70 viewers, and it just laid at 0 the whole time. It wasn't even my stream. Usually I can see the viewer count for other streams, but not my own. And today I can see my own, but I couldn't see this other person's. Yesterday. It's very weird. I don't fully understand it. I didn't do that. Hold on. I just lost the chat because I made some tiny gesture with my mouse and it flipped away the entire mod view I had in Twitch. And now, of course, it unpaused the video so you can hear my voice echo. Anyway, hold on. Okay. So, I'm going to try to get the... So... all dinos. First, I'm just going to talk a lot, and then we'll actually start to talk about again. We'll talk it all through again, and then I'll put some marks down on this, and it'll actually feel like we're working. All dinos can run left and right, or fly left and right. So this is important to distinguish. Within the data model, you are not always running. Sometimes you are in the air and your feet are not touching the ground. That is important to distinguish. So this right here is a bit outdated. Universal controls, left and right, run. Because pteranodons can fly, they never run. However, there's the Archaeopteryx, which runs and glides. And glide is basically a fly, a very kind of a non-effective fly. They can flap their wings and they can run. So the Archaeopteryx will be a nice bridge between these various concepts that we want to bring together. Jump. Not all dinos can jump. So first of all, the first two things in the Dino Design Guide are misleading. Not totally incorrect. And duck. Not all dinos can duck. all running dinos can duck, um, or at least put their head down, which means that when you're close to food, putting your head down will make you eat the food. If you are jumping in the air, depending on what type of dino you are, you will perform a pounce, which quickens your descent. I realized physically that's impossible, because you can't alter your mid-air trajectory just on a whim, but these dinos can. Can't they walk? Flying dinosaurs can walk. That is true. Well, in this game, I don't know if pterodactyls can walk. They never touch the ground. Archaeopteryx can walk and run, but Kincaid, I don't think that dactyls can walk. Maybe that's something we want to explore. But I don't think we ever considered that. I suppose technically it's possible that if they hit that, what do they do when they hit the ground? You said in the doc you had to walk before you could fly? Did we say that about pterodactyls? I don't think so. Why would they want to walk if they can fly? I think the walk would be often accidental if you hit the ground. I think you'd kind of stumble. Although I'm not quite sure how far we want to take it. However, with a data model that takes into account things we might want to do in the future, we can plan for that and make it easier for the coder to deal with it later. So these are good things to bring up. Would a pteranodon ever want to walk on the ground? We can assume that potentially yes. Maybe one day we will want them to walk. So, if a pterodactyl is walking on the ground, can it duck? Probably not. But who knows? Special attack. Activate your special ability. Usage is unique to each playable dino and context sensitive. So all playable dinos will have a special attack. If you're playing as a Pteranodon, I don't know if we established that. Maybe we did. Stamina. So the stamina mechanic is what you use to activate your power with their own unique special ability. It regenerates passively over time and receives a boost when your dino eats food. Carnivores and omnivores cannot eat the same food. Okay. In addition, receiving heavy impacts will drain your dino's stamina proportionately. Stockpiled stamina provides a small bonus to impact resistance, so it's easier for a dinosaur who just used up its stamina to be stunned or knocked around. So stamina is not just for special attacks, it's also kind of like a shield almost. I guess I will end up reading the very first part because it's important. Your success in Dino Run 2 depends on more than your efficiency of movement. It's also about avoiding damage and obstacles. In player-controlled dinosaurs, while they cannot be killed, other than the doom, there is no life bar. Taking hits can be detrimental to your cause, as the doom looms closer with each setback. Taking heavy hits depletes your stamina, so dinos must enter dangerous situations or start fights judiciously. When a dinosaur player or non-player is hit by something, be it a rock or the swing of an ankylosaurus's tail, the force and direction of the impact is compared to the mass, momentum, and remaining stamina of the receiving dinosaur. So stamina will be your buffer when you receive an impact. The calculation results in one of several outcomes. If the impact isn't heavy enough to stun, it's just slightly displaced. Or the dino is knocked back slightly, enters a short stun animation slowing their movement. All stuns disable special abilities. Heavy stun, the dino is knocked back considerably and enters a longer stun animation, slowing their movement a longer time. Sprawling, the dino is sent flipping through the air, completely out of control of the player. When it lands, it will lose a moment, regaining its footing. Does it say foofing? Footing. Home run, the dino is launched completely out of the play area. This can only occur to non-player dinos. I didn't realize it was called a home run. It's a good one. That also happens in the original game. Kind of like when you've got your rampage on and you knock the dino off. Gobbling. A carnivore which moves into a sufficiently smaller creature will automatically gobble it. Same goes for herbivores encountering certain plants. For smaller food, the dino may need to duck. When a dinosaur gobbles, it regains stamina and a speed boost for 4 seconds. Player-controlled dinosaurs can never be gobbled, except by the dreaded Tyrannosaurus, which functions as a doom feature in some levels. While Dino Run 2 introduces a degree of combat, players should be focused on racing and not harassing each other. To that end, the game will be designed around the principle that combat can be useful in quick clashes, but ultimately disadvantageous for the aggressor to lock other players into a drawn-out battle. To this end, it will generally favor the defender in terms of stamina expenditure. Successful hits or debilitations to any given player will be increasingly less effective. Okay. Those are the basics. So now we'll skim through the playable creatures. Raptor. So it is the fastest dinosaur since it has a low mass. It is very vulnerable to large creatures. You can see here in its stats, I'm assuming 6 is the max. It has the fastest top speed and the fastest acceleration. It's got a medium jump and it is not very strong. Pterosaurs. It can fight while being vulnerable and slow on the ground. Huh. It says slow on the ground. I guess they do walk. So that solves that, huh? Hitting people in multiplayer will never not feel good. In the original Dino Run, though, I wouldn't really call it feeling good. I mean, you can't. There's no real feeling of impact when you pounce someone else. And actually, sometimes, if you pounce someone else, sometimes the other player won't even see it. It could be a superficial pounce that doesn't actually send them back. It's hard to explain why, but it's mainly because multiplayer exists only, the actions in multiplayer only exist on the client side. There's no authoritative server that decides exactly what is going on in the world and broadcasting that information out to every client. It is up to the client to determine what is actually going on in the game, and then it will send messages to the other clients that says, this is what I'm doing over here. But the other clients may decide that I'm not going to show that, or I'm not going to respect that because it would mess up their client experience too much. So really, multiplayer in the original Dino Run is more of a every dino for themselves situation. They're all kind of playing single player together and comparing their performance. And every once in a while, there is a true interaction between two players where one will pounce the other one and the other one will get stunned. But both players have to agree that that actually happened in order for both of them to see it. That will not be the case with this game, though. We need the multiplayer. Well, I think that won't be the case. We need the multiplayer experience to be more uniform here, so that if you pounce someone, you attack someone, and they get knocked back, both players should actually see it. But apparently, pterosaurs can walk because they are slow on the ground. We will take this document as canon. A dactyl carried me through the ground in multiplayer once, and you won by falling through the sky. That sounds like original Dino Run to me. Very typical. That's a great way to win multiplayer. They have the slowest top run speed in the game. They should be able to keep a pterosaur in the air about 95% of the time. 5% they'll be on the ground. Careful balance between the stamina cost of flapping and the tactical and speed advantages of diving, which keeps the player fairly close to the earth with other creatures, reinforced by food and collectibles being close to the ground. The advantage of flight is also put in check by its innate weakness to impact, such that the pterosaur struck in the air will very frequently find itself in the sprawling state. So as you can see, They have a very low top speed and a very low acceleration. Maximum when they're flying. I would. So the pterosaur, it's got 2 out of 6. Going quickly through here. Archaeopteryx, only slightly faster. The Dino. Dino Ron. I'm actually surprised that it's 2 out of 6 and not 1 out of 6. I mean, yeah, maybe. We'll see. Special abilities. Let's get back to special abilities later. I just want to do an overview of each one. The Stego. It's relatively slow, although its top speed is 4 out of 6. Okay. It excels at downhill because of its special ability, which we've already demonstrated in Stego Ball. Like, disable competitors with a particularly effective attack, and the impunity granted by its mass and passive abilities. All right. And it also wears scarves. Stegosaurus. Okay. Pachycephalosaurus. I will call it a Pachy. Beginner friendly, fairly well rounded, able to exert force far beyond what its mass and size would suggest. And I think this is the one that can bang its head. Yeah, it's like a battering ram. So not as fast as the Raptor, but close. It's very well rounded. Full Dino Ron lobby. Yeah, we'll get to Dino Ron. Carnotaurus. It has high speed and strength. It's very aggressive. Fluctuating stamina. Dramatic stop and go cadence to movement. Yeah. It also barely has any arms. So as we can see, it's very fast, but its acceleration is it takes a lot longer to get up to that top speed. Archaeopteryx bridges the playstyles between the Velociraptor and the Pterosaur. The lightest character and one of the most mobile. It pays for its awesome versatility with the highest degree of vulnerability and very low strength. Right. Top speed 3. So it's slower overall than every other dino. Except Ron. and the pterosaurs. Alright. Triceratops. As heavy and powerful as it is, the Triceratops is extreme in nearly every aspect. As a racer, it accelerates slowly, eventually reaching a very high top speed, where it should be considered effectively unstoppable to everything but a solid wall or a more massive creature. It has to smash its way to victory. Triceratops is probably going to be one of the hardest things to implement in the game. For multiple reasons. Like the Stego, it is quadrupedal. This is 4 legs. 4 legs on the ground. So here's the thing we need to think about in the data model, because the data model is not just about abilities and stats. The data model is about physics and all the other aspects of a dino that make it interact in its world. So physics-wise, the raptor, the pterosaurs, the pachy, not the carno, the Archaeopteryx, the Dino, I'll call it a Dino, are easy, and Ron are easy to implement physics-wise because they're bipedal, and their physics object right now is literally just a circle in the game that rolls along the terrain like the Stego ball. But once we get into the 4-legged dinos, if you can imagine, well, actually, let's just sketch. It's all useful. Hold on. I've got my my tool thing on a different. Wow, that's a very thick. Okay. It's way too. Where am I? Where are my properties? Hold on. Where are my properties? Okay, they're off the screen. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, okay, that brush was really big. Much better. That's a little too... Yeah, there we go. I don't know why it's pink, but... Okay. So, let's think about terrain. Here's a typical piece. A raptor or other small dinosaur is basically, in the original game, it was just a circle. So a physics shape, and it moved. It didn't even roll. The physics shape, there was no such thing as rolling in the original Dino Run because I coded the physics myself and I made it as simple as possible because I had never done it before, so I had to make it simple. The advantage to coding the physics myself was I had total control over the engine and I could break the rules whenever I wanted to, which was very useful for boulder rolling and other things, sticking to hills to make it seem more realistic. We are semi at the mercy of Unity's multiple physics engines, which we have a little bit of flexibility with, but not nearly as flexible as a roll your own. So all dinos were circles in the original, which meant that when their head hit something or their tail hit something, you never really saw it. And I think that it could be that the larger dinosaurs in the original game, this may be not true, I can't remember. Like a stego had a smaller circle when it was interacting with the ground, but it had a bigger circle when your raptor would jump on it. So it might have had two physics shapes, and this physics shape would just ignore the ground because I could filter out the interactions. Let's undo that. So let's talk about new Dino Run. For realism, we should know when something hits your tail, and we should know when something hits your head, which can probably be represented by circles. These are ovals, but actually they should be circles. This is just theoretical. Perhaps the raptor is a main circle for its body, a rectangle for its tail, and another circle for its head. And when you're going up a hill, these things rotate with it. However, it may make sense to make the middle circle a wheel. Because when it's a wheel, we give the wheel basically a lot of friction so that when it rolls over the ground, it will spin fast. And we can measure the angular velocity of the wheel, and from that extrapolate how fast to make the dino's leg animation go. That's one way to do it. In the original Dino Run, there was no spinning, so it would just basically slide along this ground. There was no such thing as friction in the original game. Anything that looks like friction was just me telling the circle to stop moving at a particular rate when you let go of the keys. But in a more modern physics engine, we have friction. So if it is turning, then these don't need to turn. They're not connected explicitly to this wheel. They're connected via joints probably. And so we can keep things, sorry. Let me switch colors. when we're going up a hill, we detect the angle. We always know the angle of the foot circle. We could call it, let's just call it the foot circle, to the ground. And this, I don't know, looks about like a 30-degree angle. And there's a certain thresholds at which we will switch the foot animation. We'll switch the foot animation to a running up or running down. In the original game, this works in 30-degree increments. For new Dino Run, I think we'll probably need something more like 15-degree increments for feet. Because it really, like when you're going up a 15-degree hill and your feet are at the 30-degree increment, it doesn't look that great. This was just something we were willing to give up detail-wise in the original Dino Run. I don't know if we'll be willing to have it look that bad in the new one, though. I think 15-degree increments. Maybe we'll do 20-degree increments, like 20, 40, 60. I don't know. We'll see. So, this is the consideration for bipedal dinos. Fairly simple. It gets a lot more complicated when you have a four-legged dino. For example, its rear legs are here and its front legs are here. Maybe more like here. Now, if this is a stegosaur, I know, I just made a car. Stegosaurus, sorry. I'm actually a better drawer than this, but I'm using the mouse, and I am not clever with the mouse. But that's a Stegosaurus right there. Is there any explanation as to running on? What do you mean, Kincaid? Oh, I don't think I'm seeing your whole chat. Oh, running on ceilings. In the original, yeah. So it was a mistake. It was a bug that I just left in there. When the circle hits the ceiling, it's generally interpreted as a head bonk, and then we send you back down. But sometimes, for reasons I didn't fully understand, it would interpret hitting the ceiling as my feet are on the ground, and it would just let you continue to move. Because when your physics circle hits the ceiling line, it does a quick calculation of what is my angle from the circle to the line. And depending on what that angle returns as, it's either interpreted as a head bonk against the ceiling or a feet touch on the ground. And for some reason or another, sometimes that angle that is returned became a feet touch on the ground, even though it wasn't. So when it's a feet touch on the ground, it automatically enables running mode, which just propels you forward as you press the key. So it was a bug that we liked. And you know Dino Run has dozens of those. So anyway, Stego is going to feel more like a car. However, it's not going to look good to always... Well, for one, his feet should be down there, but at that angle there, right? It should not be feet here perpendicular to his belly. That doesn't look right. So first of all, we need two separate entities, two sets of feet. Second, let's take a more extreme example. These hills happen a lot. Let's even get more extreme. These hills happen a lot. It won't look good. It won't look natural for a Stegosaurus to go. It's almost the same as what I just drew. Whatever. I'll answer that new question in just a moment. It doesn't look good for. It looks fine if it's a car. It makes sense for a car to just pivot up like that. Get these bumps here. Oh boy, those are terrible. All right, I'll go slower. How do I describe this? If you have a real body, you're not a plank all the time. A car is a plank. It is a hard line between these two wheels that connects them. And you expect a car to behave that way when it goes over a hill. However, you do not expect like an organic mammal body, or actually, sorry, they're not mammals. You don't expect a reptile body to behave like a plank. So I'll use stick figures. You expect, now correct me if I'm wrong, you expect the body to basically bend up like that. So here is, you see there's a difference. Oh, here's the other issue. Once he gets on the top, you know, how does it look in all these different moments? If he's a plank, it's just going to look stupid. Imagine a Stegosaurus as a plank going over a bump and be like, no, it's a real living creature, so its body articulates as it goes over it. It's basically like an accordion style. So we need a solution where we have two sets of legs that are detecting different angles on the ground. And we need to draw some things we need to hand draw, like the feet. They need to be hand drawn. But the body itself probably won't be completely hand drawn. It will need to be described as a flexible physics shape. There's lots of ways we can do that. Maybe it's a series of rectangles that are overlapped with each other and have some springiness between the wheels. Now, when it comes to his back, that probably will be hand drawn and just rotated. I don't really know if we can. Maybe we can get that detailed. Maybe we can draw those back. What are they called? They're not fins. Plates. Maybe we can get his back plates to be drawn dynamically, but that might be a little spines. Yeah, they're like, I'll just call them plates. That might be a little too much. I don't know if maybe eventually we want to go that far, but there's a balance. Like, do we think 5 or 10 years ahead and try to implement what we think we'll want that far into the future, or do we just get a nice, 1 to 2 to 3 year plan and do what we know is feasible right now, and then try to leave it open enough to improve later? So for that reason, we probably won't be implementing the Stegosaurus and Triceratops anytime soon. But within the data model, we do need to account for the fact that some dinosaurs will have 4 legs, and there will be an articulation between them. We don't have to describe in great detail how that articulation is going to work or how it's going to be rendered in the game yet, but we do need to account for it. So that's that. Plates. They're called plates. Right. So, let's see. So the Dino, how do you pronounce this? Anybody know how to pronounce this? Deinonychus or Deinonychus? The terrible claw with a razor-sharp sickle-shaped talon nearly as long as your hand. It boasts well-rounded stats and excellent agility, both on the ground and in the air, thanks to its dangerous movement-based special attack. Rending claws and blitz attacks. It tends to come out on top in a skirmish, even against larger prey. Okay. So, let's get into special abilities. Raptor's Super Boost. Same effect as Danron Classic, with a few notable changes due to the stamina bar. Activated with the special key anytime the stamina bar is at least 30% full. Once activated, it cannot be turned off until stamina has been fully drained. Alright. The Pterosaur. While running, if stamina is available, pressing and holding special will launch the Pterosaur off the ground after a short runway, gaining a modest amount of elevation with a few flaps. Its initial launch costs a small amount of stamina. I guess we are going to end up reading this entire thing. It's important though. As long as the special key is held, the Pterosaur will glide, which has no inherent stamina cost. While gliding, only flapping costs stamina. If stamina is depleted, the player will be forced to glide or dive to a landing. So you are actually pressing the special key to flap. I think. While gliding, controls change to forward, pitch down. This will angle the Pterosaur downward, pitching it to a dive. It can gain a huge amount of velocity at the cost of elevation. Back. If it's pitched downward, it will pull upward. Up, flap. Oh no, you press up to flap? Oh, increase elevation at the cost of stamina. Down, no effect while gliding. If it's not gliding, it will enter the pounce state. Releasing special at any time during flight causes it to enter the falling state. It cannot regain flight without taking off again, but it is capable of entering the pounce state as normal. So this is actually not how I thought pterosaurs would work. So that's more interesting. So you do spend a good amount of time on the ground. Well, it says 5%. Who knows what that's actually going to be. But you have to keep special held the whole time you're flying. And you don't press it over and over again to flap. Which makes sense. It's not Flappy Bird. So you have your special key down to fly. And then you're using movement keys to... I mean, when you press up, you do flap. But I think it's an automatic flap. It's not like press up every time you want to flap. Passive ability. If it hits a wall, it will momentarily cling to it. If the player continues to hold special and jumps, the pterosaur will boost off the wall, reversing its initial flight direction. This is the only way it can change direction. If the player does not jump within 1 second, it will enter its falling state. Huh. I don't think I knew about this. Pretty sure I read this document, so maybe I just forgot it. I'll have to come back to that later. The way I work personally is I try not to get hung up on individual details and resolve them. I don't have to resolve every detail in my mind in order to move on to the next thing. I do multiple scrubs, as they call them, of a thing so that I can kind of absorb it. Lead dev does not read design docs. I'm not the lead developer. Trust me, lead dev reads design docs. That is not me. Sorry. Twitch Dino Watcher, is the stilt still planned? No, the stilt has been shelved. We pitched it to Apple Arcade and they expressed initial interest, but then came back and said no thanks. and we pitched it to one other publisher. Everyone thought it was a really cool idea, but it's quite an enormous project and probably too risky financially because it's kind of artsy. And yeah, it's been shelved. Chances are it will probably never get made, but you never know. Highly unlikely to get made, but not 100% sure that it won't get made. Let's go to the Stego. We'll come back to the pterosaur. He's pretty complicated. He has a Stegoball and a Thagomizer. Stegosaur's special ability is context sensitive, resulting in a Stegoball if he's on a downhill slope, and a Thagomizer attack if it is not. Thagomizer. Activating a Stegosaurus' special ability while holding left or right will result in a Thagomizer attack, costing a small amount of stamina. Holding the special key longer will result in a 360-degree power Thagomizer which strikes surrounding creatures with a huge impact. So that basically means a tail whip. How is a Stegosaurus going to whip a dinosaur in front of it with its tail? We might have to rethink this one. I don't know. I'll ask Jeffrey. I think he came up with that. He could be on this stream technically, but he is going to become a father any moment or day now, and he has bigger priorities than being on a Dino Run stream right now. He is fast spin around. Doesn't really have to be realistic. Fast spin around like roll into a ball, or turn his whole body around. Yeah, we'll see. I can understand smacking something behind you with your tail, but smacking something in front of you with your tail? I don't know. Holding special while moving downhill will cause the Stego to enter Stegoball form. He enjoys stun immunity and considerable impact resistance. Rolling downhill, it's able to generate far more velocity than it could while running. Impact to other creatures is amplified. Any smaller creature may boulder ride a Stegoball. The form will automatically end when the player releases special or when the average velocity of the Stegoball has fallen below a certain threshold. It costs no stamina to initialize or maintain Stegoball, but stamina is spent to jump or to power up hills. Makes sense. If you press back, it slows its roll, and forward applies additional torque to the roll at a stamina cost. Stegoballs can jump, but not very high. So we've seen this already in Stegoball. A Stegosaurus unrealistically will be able to jump while running. It seems that you could jump higher while you're in a ball. We'll find out. Passive ability, Walking Fortress. Has an increased resistance to impact. Creatures who tread on a Stegosaurus's back are slowed. Okay. Packy. A Packy is a battering ram. The Packy spends a portion of its stamina to dash forward with its head lowered, exerting explosive force up and out. It's followed by a brief recovery animation. It can be used to pop creatures into the air, break barriers, launch rocks, or as a sudden boost of speed. The low stamina cost of a battering ram allows it to be used frequently. It has a passive ability of a thick skull. Increased resistance to impact from the front or to the head, which this little physics shape will come in handy for, because it's its own thing. And we can kind of see how the circle will probably be right there, the head circle will be there, and we'll have a rectangle for the tail. Although the tail swishes around a lot in these animations. So it might need to be a more complex physics object, but we don't know yet. What's up, J-Spec? Caveman drawings I'm seeing. Oh, I was demonstrating some physics stuff for the Stego. It's like a Stego car. So we have the Carno Taurus. It can devour. Following a mighty snap of its jaws, the Carno tosses its prey in the air and swallows it in a single gulp. It can be used on just about any creature smaller than it, with a far more forgiving margin than other carnivores. It gains a much bigger stamina boost from gobbling. Because player-controlled dinosaurs cannot be gobbled, this ability will instead toss them sprawling behind the Carnotaurus, so kind of grabs them with his jaws and tosses them. It can be used to toss rocks and other obstacles. While it has some effect of stunning larger dinos, it isn't the most efficient use of the dino's abilities. Devour has no stamina cost. Passive disability, voracious metabolism. The Carnotaurus's speed might exact. The Carnotaurus's speed and might exacts a heavy price, resulting in constantly draining stamina while running. Moreover, the top speed and acceleration of the Carnotaurus scales with its remaining stamina. Huh. It's always using stamina. But if it's always using stamina, and stamina is always regenerating, well, he has to eat a lot, basically. He's a fast burning he's very fast burning, and he will slow to a halt if he can't find food. So when you use to sum up, the Carnotaurus is great to use and highly effective if you can constantly find food. The Archaeopteryx. For a low stamina cost, it can beat its wings and jump a second time in midair, gaining impressive height. Like the pterosaur, it can glide. Unlike a pterosaur, it can't continue to fly. It has the advantage of breaking into a glide at any moment after the apex of its jump, foregoing the need to set up a takeoff. The result is an agile dinosaur equally at home in the skies and on the ground. It shares the controls, advantages, disadvantages of gliding with the pterosaur, with the notable difference that the up key cannot be used to flap. Okay. The Triceratops. It can charge. It's activated with a special key and a directional key anytime the stamina is at least 30% full. Once activated, it cannot be turned off until stamina has been fully drained. While charging, it locks into a horizontal movement and direction and cannot turn or stop until he runs out of stamina or hits a wall. The longer charge is active, the more the Triceratops exceeds its normal speed limitations, while gaining ramping impact and stun resistance. At max velocity, very little can stand in its way without being launched skyward. While holding the directional key, the Triceratops performs an upward goring attack for a small stamina cost. It has increased resistance to impact to the front or the head. Someone told me okay. Deinonychus. I'll just call it Dinon. It has a diving rend. For a modest stamina cost, the Dinon can perform a rending kick in any direction, quickly clearing considerable ground in an arc while lashing out with its talons. Diving rend is context sensitive, either targeting and lashing out at a dinosaur within its range or focusing on distance. This attack can be used mid-jump. While it doesn't pack anywhere near the punch of a Pachy's battering ram, it covers more ground, can be used in any direction, and delivers the hobbled debuff to creatures hit with the attack. Hobbled creatures move more slowly for a few seconds. So it's kind of similar to the Raptor's Pounce, but it's like a super pounce. And of course, Dino Ron. Ron is a poor, unfortunate 20th century human accountant who has been temporarily displaced, finding himself in a hostile world of prehistoric titans. He knows his chances of survival are very near zero, but that won't stop him from running. He's an unlockable joke character received from completing a secret ending on insane difficulty. He's slow, panicked, always falling down, and woefully underprepared for the Mesozoic era. Even so, if we've learned one thing from making games, someone will manage to complete the game with him. Oh boy. He has the lowest possible stats. He is on the Cretaceous diet, a trend which gained popularity once the paleo diet was deemed too mainstream. To his dismay, none of the available foods is very familiar. He's 74 kilograms. His passive disability is that he's panicked. The megafauna has sent Ron's flight response into overdrive, and he's kind of losing his mind. While running, he has a random chance to slip and fall or tumble down hills. Special ability, keep it together, Ron. He can exert stamina to sprint marginally faster and avoid falling over for at least a few seconds. So yeah, you'll get a very special ending if you can complete the game with Ron. Okay, so there is our overview of the dinos. Now I will take a quick sip and actually start to put things down on paper. That's what you want to call it. So let's get our trusty drawing tools ready. Ovals are nice. I don't want a fill. Don't want a fill. No fill. What just happened? No, I accidentally turned off outlines. Alright, yeah. So I'm gonna zoom in. Okay. So first, let us consider. Actually, I will bring my toolbar over here. Not the properties, but bring a toolbar over. First, let us consider. Well, that's a reasonable font to use, but why are you I said don't anti-alias. Hope Ron will be able to ride other dinos. At least he have a chance of surviving. I think that sounds reasonable. If he's lucky enough to hop onto one of their backs, he's incredibly slow. He'd have to do it while they're charging him and then land on them. Well, that would mean Ron would have to jump very high. Generic dino. Okay. We will start with the idea of a generic dino. Once again, trying not to think of this as inheritance, trying to think of it as composition. This is going to be a challenge because I always think of things as inheritance because I've been object-oriented for many years. So, but I have done compositional design before, so it won't be a total stretch. 20 dactyl chain with Ron. First, we will think about things that they all share. So this basically be components that will all be part of any particular dino. Actually, thinking about composition makes it easier to organize than inheritance. Because really, we're just listing all of the things that a dino could possibly do, and then each dino will be a collection of those smaller things. But also these little components will be linked to each other in various ways. Those ways I can't imagine just yet, but we'll get there. Okay. I don't think this is the best font to use for it's gonna be plain, gonna be pretty plain. Yeah, that's fine for now. ASD, all dinos can ASD. Okay. Maybe I don't even need to think about generic dino if this is compositional. But we'll see. I'll just keep that word there. So I won't say run. They can all move. And all dinos can move. And they all move via, well, it's not just left and right. Some move via up and down. All dinos. Why does it keep doing that? You know what? I'll just copy and paste it. We'll get more specific with these in a moment. I'm just going to be very, very, very general to start. All dinos can eat. Isn't that nice? All right. All dinos can jump. Every single one of them, right? Even pterosaurs, apparently. All dinos. Do we say have a special attack? See, this is where all dinos do have not a special attack. They have a special. I'm not ready to think about that yet. Okay. So, thinking about the basics. Now, some dinos have player control, but some don't. So that needs to be considered. Actually, I'll call that control, and there'll be two types of control. I'll make that a symbol so that's easier to duplicate. Some have player control, some are controlled through AI. These are all very obvious things, but it's good to get them down so that we can start to refine and define them and group them. All dinos do go to heaven. Yes, that's true. Right, all have a special ability. If they're player controlled, right? Well, not necessarily. An AI controlled dino can probably activate its special ability regardless of if it's an NPC dino. So all dinos have a special. Maybe. So here's an important distinction. There are dinos in the game that I have not. These are just playable dinos. But there's food. There's fish and birds and little tiny runners and things that that you can eat that the player will never control. So it is incorrect to say that all dinos can eat. It's also incorrect to say all dinos can jump. Because the bird that you eat can probably never jump. It's safe to say that most dinos can jump, which means that most dinos will have this component to them. All dinos can move. So let's just list all the things that dinos could do, and then we'll start to organize them. So some dinos can glide, and I'm not going to call it fly. because even a pteranodon, we can call it a glide, or we could call it a fly and know that a glide is like a one flap fly. This is where it starts to get a little tougher. I'll call it fly for now. And when you're flying, you can flap, which will extend your fly. I aim. You've said I. Is that what you meant to say? Okay, let's just scrub through here again. All dinos can be impacted. I'm going to call it hurt. And different things will happen. So if you can imagine what this will look like when it's done, it's going to look like this intricate web of interconnected components. Because, let's say, for example, that when a dino is hurt, depending on its configuration, it will impact your jump, like if you can jump again soon. It will impact your move, if you can move again soon, or perhaps your movement is reduced by X% for a certain amount of time. They're all connected to each other. They all influence each other, which is why do I have jump twice? That's weird. Which is why inheritance is problematic, because I would have to start thinking about the way that these would be more like ovals that are contained within larger ovals. I think it's just easier to think compositionally, because to start, I can just list all of the things that any type of dino could possibly do, and then we'll start to link them into meaningful groups. And a meaningful group really is a dino, a particular dino in the game, playable or not. A particular config. So really all it is a dino is a configuration of components. And in the configuration, however we decide to show it, it could be like a JSON file, it could be defined in Unity, it could be defined in an editor. It really is a particular collection of components that have defined links to other components, and those links are going to need parameters. It's really going to look a lot like the wiring you might see on an analog synth, where there are audio components and they are linked to other audio components through wires, and sometimes there are parameters that are passed to the new component depending on what the other component is doing. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, it will eventually. I'm not going to do all of this on stream. Some of it I'm going to do off stream as well, but this is a good start. So let's just review. A dino can move, yes. Some dinos can eat. Some dinos can jump. A dino can be hurt. Some dinos can fly. These two are somewhat related, so we'll keep it over here. All dinos can be controlled, either through AI or player. I'm going to move this over here because I want room for sorry. Oh, good amount of people here now. 16, incredible. Hello, 16 people. I want to mention something. One would be forgiven for asking, why has it taken 2 years to actually get to this? And I don't have a great answer for that. We were working on other parts of the engine, you know, before the Kickstarter, during the Kickstarter, right after it. Dino implementation into the game we thought would come earlier, but we spent more time on terrain generation, how physics are defined, little tiny things here and there. And we spent a lot of that time just doing nothing, making no progress on it for various reasons. So I am happy to finally be able to dive into this. And I suppose that around the Kickstarter and even the year after that, for some reason I didn't feel, I don't know, I didn't feel like I would be the one doing this, but I'm glad that I am the one doing this now. Because I am going to do it with Rand, the coder. We will work on this together. But it helps for me as the person whose job it is to keep the whole project together and moving forward, to understand at least the basics. Because I used to be a coder as well. I mean, I still am a coder. I hobby code. So having an understanding of this helps me work with the lead coder, and it helps me understand all, you know, the needs of the project at large as well. How did you forget so many streams? I don't know, Clevin. So let's just go through again. So let's think about control. AI can control a thing, and a player can control a thing. The player controls a thing with a controller or the keyboard. AI does not use a keyboard or a controller. However, it will activate the exact same things. So we can say that. Did you work with any of the qualifying on the Land Track Awards? Yeah, we did a few sketches. I talked to Jeffrey about that recently, and we are going to start back up again on those because I know it's been a crazy delay on Land Tracks. We never got specific about when we would deliver them, but we want to at least deliver sketches to everyone that ordered one, and I think there's about 30 or 40 people that have Land Tracks. Jeffrey was in a position to start sketching those and working them out. He was. If you missed what I said earlier, he's going to be a father any day now, and so he is not able to work on those anytime soon. I think we agreed that September or so is when we can dive back into those Land Tracks and start delivering sketches to people. Not necessarily finished art, because the finished art is going to be used in the game, most of them at least. And the art for other eras and terrains has not been defined yet. If those Land Tracks are in the current terrain set that that we know how it looks, then those are more likely to get done soon. Hopefully that answers your question. You're slowly getting there. Excellent. So let's think about control. In the end, it all ends up being the same thing, but the player has an extra step to take. So hold on. No. So I'll just call it keys. I need to move all this over. I don't need to see that anymore. The player can use the keys or a controller to achieve the same ends. And I'm going to move this back down here actually. I know there are like mind mapping software to actually make this process go quicker, but I'm just so comfortable with Flash that I'm just going to keep doing it. It doesn't have to look good. Yes, they are encroaching into the ovals. Whatever. So these universal controls are not correct. Up does not always jump. But up is a concept that the player can understand as I'm pressing up on the D-pad or I'm pushing the right up arrow. Really though, thinking more abstractly, since you can remap or rebind the controls, it is not necessarily an upward D-pad press or an up arrow. But there is the concept of up. So I don't know. Let's go further with that. There's the concept of up. And I'm not going to get too deep with this. But we'll spend a little time on this and then we'll go to something else. And when I say up, down, left, right, it's important to remember that I am not talking about controller presses. I'm not talking about keyboard strokes. This is a more generic concept of up, down, left, right, because they can be triggered by different things. And look, here is where we will start to bring in this. These are the things you can do. Up, down, left, right, special. Actually, so let's the player's intentions and the responses. Run, jump, glide, up, down, yeah. Responses. Intentions and responses. So yeah, we can call these intentions. Sorry, I need to reduce this. I want to put it in the middle. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm gonna reduce this a little bit. There. Are these the do these encompass all of the control concepts? Is this all you can do in the game? Is the idea of up, down, left, right, and special? Do I have that correct? Space or shift, special. Obviously not space or shift, it's remappable. I think that might be it. So this is its own special little collection of things. Looks like a 3D plane now. The keys can trigger these. The controller can trigger these. The AI can trigger these. All right, I'll fix that. Now what each, so these are all, so some concepts here. Remappable. That's important. That is a characteristic of this component. I'll stick that there. So these, we can call these the intention. And an intention creates a response, or a command. I'll call these commands. These are commands. And each one of those will give a different response depending on the dyno's configuration. Those commands are remappable. If you were feeling weird, you could remap the command of right to the left D-pad if you wanted to confuse yourself, or if Ron got really, really drunk and all of a sudden his controls are reversed. Is there WSAD? Yes, of course. You can remap these command ideas to any key or controller input, or any input device that you want. These are not keyboard commands. These are not controller commands. These are more generic ideas. So this is tied to the idea of movement. I'm going to not get too deep into this yet. I like where it's going. So the things you can do via these control commands directly are over here. And these are things that happen indirectly. You can't tell yourself, well, no, you can't instantly eat. You have to, it's contextual. You have to be, each dyno within its configuration has certain requirements that have to be met in order to eat something. So you can tell your dyno to directly move, jump, fly, or flap. You can't tell them to directly eat. Your special could be eat, or you could just be pressing down and the requirements will be met that you are pressing down and your head is touching a dyno that you can eat. These layouts are actually harder for me to create, to jump into coding right away. You write down ideas and comments as you go and implement them slowly. Yeah, I'm with you on that. This is generally not how I code either. When I code, I just jump in and start doing it, and I refine it as I go. However, I'm not very convinced that is an effective way for me to code personally. It's more fun and spontaneous to code that way. Ultimately, though, it might be less efficient, and efficiency is at your discretion. It might be that you don't. I didn't really care that I was inefficient a long time ago because I could afford to be inefficient, and it made things less stressful. So a long time ago when I was coding the original Dino run, the idea of doing something like this, it didn't even cross my mind. Um, I just went in there and I like put a circle in there and I said, when you press the right arrow, it moves to the right. When you press the left arrow, it moves to the left. And then I would start to have to think more about like, okay, remapping controls and blah, blah, blah. However, uh, via hindsight and just having been involved in the production of so many games, also understanding the scope of what we're trying to do with Dino Run 2, also understanding that Dino Run 2 needs to be a lot more scalable and extensible than Dino Run 1. It is very important to lay a solid foundation before we start coding. And this is at the request of Rand, the lead coder, that we do something like this. And also, I agree with him that we should do something like this before we start coding. Rand is a more traditionally trained coder anyway. He comes from more of the classical software engineering side of things. I come from the scrappy indie, jump right in and iterate 1,000 times before I think it's right. And like I said before, that is usually a more fun way to code. However, I think it's also a more dangerous way to code. It's fine. It's more fine when you are making a small project and you don't even know if you want to sell it and you don't have any obligations to anyone besides yourself and your own sense of satisfaction. But in this case, it's important that we do things as smartly as possible because we don't have a lot of, well, we have time, but we don't have a lot of time to waste. It'd be very bad, in 2007 and 8, it wasn't as dire for us to waste a lot of time on something. And we wasted a lot of time, mainly on working on prototypes and alphas and concepts that didn't go anywhere. These days, something like that is almost like fatal for us, to work on something for a very long time and realize that it was the wrong way to do it, or that it's just not a good idea. The stakes are higher these days. Chat. It's hard creating layouts. Yeah. You put more effort to this than the actual code writing. You can visualize what you want to do pretty well in your head, so you don't really need to create schemes. That is good, yes. I can visualize gameplay in my head really well. I can imagine what Dino Run 2 looks like pretty well. But I can't, it's harder for me to visualize the systems that I would need to create in order to see that gameplay. So something like this actually is useful for me. And there's lots of ways to go about it. You can jump right in and just say, when you press right, you move to the right. Or you can create a bunch of generic components that don't do anything and just be looking at a set of, like, at the moment, useless components, and you slowly start to add meaning and functionality to each one of those components, and you slowly start to link them all together. And then you find that you have a more robust system, and you can see the bigger picture towards the beginning of the project, as opposed to being able to grasp the big picture towards the end of the project. If you're lucky, that may not be a big deal that you didn't grasp the big picture until the very end. But you don't always get lucky. So anyway, stamina. So let's think about stamina. Stamina All dinos have stamina. And I think even NPC dinos might have stamina, but you'd never know it because you don't see their bar. But I think that's important to jot down here. And I think basically, to give you an example, this is actually let's see. When you press the special button or key, it's basically going to run through this and do a stamina check. And there'll be a little routine that says, can I actually do the thing that the player or AI controlled dino wants to do? And if the answer is no, nothing will happen. Or it could be that there's a spectrum of things that can happen based on how much stamina you have. So this stands in the way of special and the actual special ability that needs to happen, which we have not defined yet here. But it's important to have here because it's kind of like a gate between the action of requesting a special and the special actually happening over here. And then stamina is going to have its own little things going on, like rate of recovery, you know. And within a dino's configuration, we'll have information like, okay, how quickly do you drain stamina while you are pressing the key? Or is it the type of thing where you only need to press the key once and it just drains all the way to 0? These are the various types of stamina drain you can have. I'm starting to lose my voice and I'm starting to get pretty hungry. So those two things tell me that I probably will have to end the stream soon. But I'm enjoying this, so I'll go as long as I can, which is probably not much longer, probably 5 or 10 minutes. Getting into the mood to actually finish something is a challenge these days. Yes, that is what I personally wrestle with. I don't know more than anything, but close to more than anything. Motivation to stay on something for years and years is very, very difficult. Motivation to finish a large project that you've already put so much time and effort and money into is very difficult. It's one of the reasons why projects are always more of a delight to work on at the very beginning, and they can become, nightmares by the end, especially when you've lost your motivation. I find personally that I keep motivation going by not focusing on one thing only. I'm pretty good at juggling, so I juggle lots of things at once, and that helps me keep motivation going for all of them. There's no way I'd be able to work on just Dino Run or just a particular published game full time, because I would get burnt out very quickly. Side projects, yes. I always have side projects going on. I mean, to get more into the details of what I do for Pixel Jam, on any given day, I am either communicating with and strategizing and planning with the developers who make the games that we publish, like Nova Drift and X Zodiac and Temple of Snek. Or I am taking direct action on one of those published games, like making a trailer or doing social media posts or reaching out to streamers and YouTubers and content creators, or just doing, general marketing strategy planning on paper. Or I am doing level design for like a contract job. I do level design on 30XX which is like a Mega Man-esque type of game that's coming out pretty soon. I also do this, obviously, working on high-level design for Dino Run and working with Rand the coder to make sure we're making meaningful progress every week now, which is very important to us. I also do music for Nova Drift. I do music for Temple of Snack. And then I do lots of Pixel Jam weekly maintenance stuff as well, just to keep the company going. So I do a lot of different stuff. I don't have issues with motivation now. I feel motivated to do all of these things because none of them take more than like a quarter of my full-time attention. So I don't really get burnt out on them. Go get that delish salad. Yes. I am going to have my delicious salad very soon. Very, very soon, actually. My voice is almost completely wrecked. So there are lots of different special abilities. I'm going to call these actions, though. Because they're just different things that different dinos can do. And they don't necessarily need to be mapped to special. Special is a way to trigger some of these actions with stamina checking to see if those actions can be activated. But movement is an action. Jump is an action. Fly, flap, glide is an action. Eat is an action. Hurt is more of a result or response. So let's think of things as responses as well. We have actions, we have responses. Just because I put this here doesn't mean it's going to stay, too. I'm just kind of spitballing or brainstorming. Just brainstorming. Some actions are gated by stamina. Some actions are not. So let me move some things around. Move that over here. Put this over here. Okay. Special actions depend on context. Yes. So I won't even call things special actions though. I don't think. There is the request from the AI or player to perform a special. I won't call it a special action. I'll just call it a special. Certain requirements must be met before that action can take place. One of those requirements is stamina. One of those requirements... Okay, so these are like different contexts. The context is a collection of things going on like, am I pressing down? Am I pressing up? Am I touching the ground? Am I not touching the ground? Is my head touching a dinosaur? Is that dinosaur something that I can eat? These are all context. Context seems like it would encompass stamina. Huh. Maybe this is time for a rectangle. A rectangle called context. This may or may not be a good idea. We'll find out. But stamina does seem like it is part of the context. None of these seem like they are part of the context, although they might be. Context is pretty nebulous because context also takes into account, am I pressing left, am I pressing right, am I pressing down? So maybe I don't want that. This is tough. I'll leave it for now, and maybe I'll consider that commands are not part of the context, even though I feel like they are. This is a tough one. It's tough to reach a conclusion about it at the moment. Let me format that a little better. Where is my... No. I don't know if this is the proper way to go about it just yet. Just brainstorming. Dino touch. Stamina in context is a collection of current conditions. Right, okay, so we have conditions. Right. So a condition is I am pressing left, I am pressing up, I am pressing special. Conditions are also, what is my stamina? Am I touching the ground or not? Am I touching another dino? Within each one of these, though, I might need to do additional checks, like at what angle am I touching the ground, if I am touching the ground? Is this dino that I am touching something that I can eat, or is it not? Does it even matter, because the thing I'm requesting to do has nothing to do with eating? You know. So this rectangle is more like a cloud. It's not a hard rectangle because it depends on what you call context. You could say context includes left, right, up, down, special as well. But we do know that out of this is the realm of control. Actually, I think it would make more sense to put this in its own box. This is why I like Flash as opposed to like a mind mapper, because a mind mapper will go faster when you're doing things that you normally do in mind mapping, but it won't give you options to doesn't give you all the options you would need. I need to make that bigger. Hold on. Back over here. Huh. I should have just moved it. Hold on. It's fun to watch me make rectangles, isn't it? Very fun. All right. I'm going to call this control. Why is it small? Control. Okay. So, I like this. I like where this is going. Oh my gosh. I haven't saved this. I haven't saved this thing the whole time. I could have just crashed, or I could have accidentally. I don't know. I would have lost all of it. Save your stuff, guys. Save your stuff often. Oh boy, I do that a lot. I get just like lost in the task and forget to save it. Okay, so we have the concept of control. We have the concept of context. Now we have the concept of response. Which does not include any of this. We have direct response and then we have indirect response. Direct responses are things like flying, flapping, jumping, moving, eating. Things like getting hurt are an indirect response. That may not be important right now, though. Losing a 25-page essay for school taught me that. Oh, that's terrible. My uncle was writing a book once, and I don't know. I think he had finished most of it, like a full-length book. I don't think it was fiction. I think it was more like an art book. Like, I don't know exactly what it was. I don't think it was fiction. And he never backed up his hard drive. He didn't have any sort of like mirror drive, or he didn't have it at the time. Cloud backup wasn't as popular as it is now, because I think this was about 15 years ago. And his hard drive completely crashed, and he lost the whole book. That's the end of that story. It was very sad. He was pretty distraught for a long time, from what I hear. Yeah, save your stuff, back up your drive, offload it into the cloud or somewhere if you can. You don't want to have to deal with losing your stuff. It's bad news. T, did he did he keep it on a zip drive or something? I remember 90s hard drives. Particularly, I remember zip drives. I don't know if anybody ever used zips. They got really popular for a while, and then they just went away. It was great because the only option for storage at the time, if not the hard drive, for external storage was mainly just floppy disks. And by floppy, they weren't floppy. I mean, the original ones were floppy, but you know, just like those little external disks, which I think could only store, what, 1 meg? The original ones could only store 1 meg. But then the zip came out and it could store like 50 to 100 megs. It was incredible. Anyway, control, context. And there are a lot more things that could go in context that we don't have yet. Responses. I'm going to remove flap for now. I'm going to reduce all these. Actions. Actions. Maybe I should call this actions. And then something else response. Because actions have responses. Right? Does that make sense? We'll see. And each one of these has its own subsets. And we'll connect them in meaningful ways later. Although, really, the connections, though, and the gates or filters between those connections is basically what a Dino configuration is. If we can define all of the individual components but not necessarily connect them right now, I think that'll be a good start. I'm not going to do that now. I'm about to stop because my voice is almost... Current state input equals next state, or current state minus input? Or state, oh, okay. Current state input equals next state. Yeah, we can think of things in states. I think that's more for the better for the actual code implementation and maybe not for this chart. Who knows? But yes, we will have the idea of states. That's very important. So the direct actions are jumping, flying, eating. Is that a direct action, or is that a response? Okay. This might be a good time for me to stop because I think I'm about to hit a mental hurdle. Because so let's say you press right. In the context of pressing right, are you touching the ground? And if you are touching the ground, you should move. So a sample flow here would be something like that. And another sample flow is if you're pressing down and you're touching a dino, and there would be a gate, another gate right here that says, can your dino eat this type of dino? If yes, it'll go to eat. Stuff like that. I'm not going to make those lines now, though. You also need to be in control of when your dino eats. Yeah. Eating is an action and also a response, if you think about it. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Eating would be a response. Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, let us not forget duck. So it's something like if you press down and you're touching the ground, you will duck. If you are ducking and you're touching another dino, you will eat it if, and right here we do a check, is this dino eatable by that dino? So really, this is more fluid than this chart implies, because context is, everywhere. Context could just be the gates. I'm calling them gates. I'm thinking more of like a audio processing thing, or a filter, or a parameter, where you need to do a check between linking two major concepts here. I'm not sure yet. And duck while in air is a wave high. All right, so wait. Oh, geez. I missed a bunch of chat. Okay. You also need to be controlled. Right. Eat and Dino was pressed down. Yeah. Yeah, you press down to eat. Ducking is usually when you enable something to eat if it's on the ground. And duck while in air was wave high. Yeah. Ducking while in the air is actually a pounce. It was in Dino Run 1 and 2. You can eat things just by walking into them or jumping into them. Yeah. Yeah, so certain things. So if you're on the ground, you have to press duck to eat. If you are in the air and you touch something that you can eat, you automatically eat it. I don't think that you automatically eat something on the ground when you run into it, because you may not, for whatever reason, you may not always want to eat the thing that you are touching. Case in point, if you're the Dinon, if you're the Dinon, sorry. If you're the Carnotaurus and you run up against something that you could eat for stamina, but there's a dino you're racing with who's right behind you, you could instead do your special attack and launch it backwards, and it would hit your opponent and stun them. And you may, in that moment, decide that it's more advantageous to stun your opponent than to give yourself a stamina boost, because maybe your stamina is already doing pretty well. So, you should not automatically eat something just because you run into it, unless you're in the air. So we have all of these contexts, right? Fly, jump, duck, move, hurt, eat. Response could also be stamina boost, right? That seems reasonable to assume. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. That's a proper response, right? Stamina boost. And then we have things like eggs, that increases your DNA. We haven't gotten to any of that stuff yet. Ducking, pouncing, and simply running into it without doing the first two. Yeah. I think this is a good time for me to stop because I'm very hungry. My voice is starting to become painful to use. And I feel like this is a solid amount of results for 2 hours of work. This stuff is really valuable moving forward. So once again, I would normally never do something like this, but I'm used to working on very small games. I still consider Dino Run 1 to be a medium-sized game. It wasn't small, but I didn't really know how to make games back then. It was the second completed game we ever did. And I did just jump into it and start messing with code. And in a way, I kind of regret that because I had to shoehorn multiplayer into Dino Run 1, and that was a nightmare. I remember just like crying a lot trying to get it to work because I was literally trying to shove crumbling meatballs into a big plate of spaghetti code. And it finally did work, and it doesn't always work when you're playing it. And it was a real coding nightmare to implement. And one of the reasons is because I didn't think about the big picture like this before doing it. So when we talk about multiplayer, that introduces a new aspect into control. So we have your player controlling your dino with keys or controller. But then we also have the multiplayer player. And the game doesn't care whether he's using keys or controller. And he's not an AI. So he's the third thing here. He is sending signals to basically a Dino on the screen that is not controlled via you or the AI. Let's change this to you. Basically, and then we have someone else. There's another human. Take it slow so you're not overwhelmed, right? Oh wait, we have a lot more chat. Context also includes your player Dino's blood sugar level, so context also includes current mood. Right. Your blood sugar level, gonna be stamina. So anyway, yeah. Had I thought about this concept when I started Dino Run 1, multiplayer would have been so much easier, because even though it probably would have still been spaghetti, it would have been spaghetti created with knowing that I was eventually going to need multiplayer. So just being aware, at least being aware of all the things that the game will need to cover, is a good idea. And making, even if this chart doesn't get too much more complicated, even if it doesn't look like some, schematic from an old analog synth, where there's literally like hundreds or thousands of little tiny connections with gates and filters between them all. Even if it never looks like that, which it won't. Just spending 2 hours doing something like this, and maybe even if I never touch this again, just having done this will, plant some subconscious seeds in me and any other coder that works on Dino Run, that will influence their decisions while they're actually writing code. Hopefully influence them for the better, so that there will be less fuss, less stress, less refactoring, less iteration. It will make the iterations more meaningful. What about the Dino's opinion? I don't know if I'm ready to go there. Does the Dino want to move right? Have we even considered what the Dino wants us to do? What it wants to do itself? Should we be concerned that we're controlling it? Yeah. The Dino's opinion is AI. That will be, we will figure out. That's the Dino's opinion. So yeah, I'm gonna end it for today. Here's a more. This is what we produced after 2 hours. It's pretty cool. If we spend another 2 hours, I think we could get a pretty solid foundation for moving forward with some real code. And so the next stream will be Tuesday, 10 a.m., Dino Run Music. The next Dino Run Dev stream will be next Thursday, 10 a.m. And thank you everyone for coming. And I will see you some other time. Bye-bye.